from North Devon Council for hosting us here today, and to the officers who have also supported us and this organisation. By Ken, please.
I think you mean Ken Miles, not Ken Jones.
Oh, my apologies.
We're in touch still.
See, the thing is, once we get north of Exeter, that's been finished. Then you know. My apologies, Ken.
Well, one up to us.
My leader, Councillor Clayton, sends his apologies, unfortunately. But on behalf of North Devon Council, welcome. I apologise for anybody that's had some difficulties finding the place today. This is our daily experience, but there you go. But yeah, welcome to North Devon, and I hope the tour of the Freedom Centre later is useful to you as well. It's something that we're very proud of, so I'm hoping as many of you as possible can get to that. So welcome.
Thank you very much indeed. We are looking forward to getting out and about into North Devon later on this afternoon and visiting that Freedom Community Alliance, which is both showcasing the better partnership and collaboration in supporting some of the area's most vulnerable citizens. So it would be delighted to see as many members stay on for that, because effectively that's part and parcel of the work that we're doing here. So I am aware that the agenda for today's meeting is busy. We have a lot of business to discuss, including the approval of Devon and Torbay's corporate plan, the housing plan, and the skills and future workforce plan. However, I will endeavour to keep us on track to finish on time. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so should the alarm sound, please exit by the nearest exit and follow North Devon colleagues to the meeting point. Finally, the meeting is being live streamed. Please ensure that all mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent. And at that point, can I please bring this meeting of the Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority forward to order? Let's start with apologies. Thank you very much. Let's speak up a little bit.
Sorry, yeah.
For my benefit. Because,
yeah, we haven't received any apologies. I've just noticed that Alan Dykes is not here yet. We haven't sent his apologies.
We did have apologies from Councillor Madison as a substitute. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, declarations of interest at this point. Any disposable declarations of interest for members of the CCA board that actually was on the agenda. Any declarations of interest? None noted. Thank you. Minutes of the last board meeting, 29th of September. Happy to move those from the chair. We have a seconder. Councillor Brazil, you're happy to second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you very much indeed. Any comments on that one? Let's move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. Approved, thank you. Item 4 is the budget monitoring, April to October, and we will invite Matthew. Thank you.
Financial year. There isn't a lot that's moved on really since I was here for the month 6 paper, and sort of that view. The core funding or the core team delivery, essentially more or less in line with what we were discussing at month 6. We are still seeing some earnings coming through from the cash balances that we hold in terms of programme delivery. A few offset some that we're seeing as part of the support services, but essentially we're predicting that the income that the CCA will receive will exceed the costs that we're incurring this financial year. And currently we're forecasting to have a sort of carry forward request at the end of the year of just under 540,000. That potentially will be used to smooth next year's budget shortfall, and depending upon is confirmed by government, hopefully later in the year around funding opportunities for the CCA. And I guess just in terms of programme delivery, this is where there has been a bit of a step up in terms of the spend levels. So essentially, on the revenue side of programme delivery, of our 6.5 million confirmed funding, we've now spent 2 million, just over 2 million, and received 4.9 of that in. And then on the capital side of the funding, we've got 7.6 million confirmed coming to us for the year, of which 5.8 million has been received to date, and 4.5 million has been released and spent from that. So we are forecasting full delivery. If that full delivery doesn't happen in the year, we'll look at what opportunities exist at the end of the year to ensure that the programmes that we've committed to are able to be funded, but that will be dependent upon income. Pretty much all that be discharged this year. One small note there, really, that the overall value has dropped down slightly since programme was presented in month 6. Essentially, Department for Transport made some payments direct to Torbay rather than the CCA, which we're just recognising in terms of the expected income for the year. So programmes remain the same. It's just who they paid wasn't to plan. And then Appendix 1 of the paper goes into detail around the various programmes that have got confirmation and funding expectations against them.
Thank you very much indeed. So to bring this onto the table, I'm happy to propose this at this point. Looking for a seconder. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Cook, second. So now open to any questions, comments or debate. Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, just a few things. First of all, I noticed that the bank interest is pretty good. Just wondering, is that because you've got the capital fitting the bank account? I mean, it's almost over the last 2 years, it's getting up to 400,000. Also, Unit Commission Work Programme reference, so the overspend in employee, or is it support? Is a lot more than we've actually that. And then just 3.5. I guess contribution is expected from the councils for 25-26. Can I just say that I think not prepared to pay money until we can see some additionality and benefit from it. So at the moment, I'm pleased to see that you're not expecting us, but don't expect any in the future unless we can see some tangible benefits arise from it.
Thank you, Council. Any further comments before I go back to Mr. Thorpe to answer the questions? Councillor Long.
Money being held by Plymouth and Somerset, has that transferred over yet, or is that still sitting in their accounts earning them interest?
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, so let's go across to Mr. Thorpe. Basically, about bank interest, the 165k, confirming the position with financial position, and also picking up on that money.
Yeah. Okay, so just picking up on the interest, as you'll see on the paper, there's 2 lines there. So one of it of 269,000, that's bank interest brought forward from 24-25. That essentially relates to the interest that we earned on the capital funding that was received last year. So the 16 million, which came in, I think, end of December, which we held for that period of time as the payments went through. As you said, Councillor Brazil, that was significant. The funding that was against that was significant. Essentially, the bank interest earned for the current financial year is really the difference between the programme budgets where we receive that funding in and where we're discharging the spend out. So the table under 3.8, effectively, that's what we're able to earn that interest on, is the difference in balances there. So as we go on, we'll reflect that. We aren't necessarily forecasting too ambitiously against that that income stream yet, because we expect to spend that money hopefully as promptly as possible. But there will be some for any kind of payment delays in that. In terms of the contributions from Devon and Torbay, so the amounts that we're forecasting as underspends for this year, and then the amounts that I'm saying they're available to carry forward, that's intended to help smooth those cost pressures over the coming financial years. What we have at the moment is uncertainty around any sort of central government support to the CCA as we move forward there. So hopefully that will become clearer with time. With that, in terms of sorry, yeah. So in terms of the LEP funding, as you said, we've received a contribution from what was available under Plymouth, and I think Devon have now received the amount of funding, or nearly all of the funding, from Somerset, but are essentially understanding what commitments still exist against that, and what might be decisions around what gets done with what's not committed. I don't know if Kerry, I'm a bit out of the loop on the Devon LEP.
The memorandum of understanding has been agreed across the four parties, Somerset, Devon, Torbay and Plymouth. I'm signing that this week, so hopefully my counterparts will be as well. That will release the owed sums, including all the interest that's accrued, including the delayed time period. So there's nothing held back by Somerset. There will be allocations then to Devon Council, Torbay Council. We will determine what to do with that in accordance with our usual decision-making processes. They allocated, I think, about 89,000 to come across to the LEP in the original operating budget from the county council, but I don't know if I can speak for Torbay for that position.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So we will move to the vote. This is a vote.
Hang on a sec, I was just
My
also
apologies.
the overspend in support services of
The 165.
165,000, yeah.
Yep, sorry, that was the one I couldn't remember there. So essentially what we've had, when we set the budget, we've made some assumptions around sort of activities that we're expecting to incur costs for. In terms of setting up and becoming established, we've seen a few more that we weren't expecting to see come through. It also includes some charges that around some of the work that we've been commissioned in terms of the highways transfer of responsibilities and the planning functions around that. So there's a program management within that, some cost around some IT leases and licenses, and streaming costs associated with these meetings that we weren't necessarily expecting when we, or to the level that we're expecting to start the year. So as part of that budget setting cycle that we'll be going into for the new year, we'll be right sizing some of those one-offs versus ongoing costs with that. But Julian, Councillor Bazir, basically there was a lot of uncertainty back in February when we set the kind of CCA budget as well for supplies and services.
Thank you very much indeed. So the recommendation is for the board to note the current monitoring position. As I say, vote by the constituent members. All those in favour, please indicate. And that is unanimous, and both the lead members vote for that. So that is approved. Thank you very much. Item 5 is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, UK SPF, half-yearly report. Thank you, Kerry Benson.
Very much, colleagues. So the report sets out the progress that's been made on both the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural Economy Prosperity Fund. I think, as colleagues will recall, both arrived late. So it's been quite an art to get the funding mobilised with district council colleagues and town council in terms of essential skills and up and running. What the report sets out is that it is on target, however, in terms of both spend and outputs. All colleagues that have had the grants to deliver the programmes have been consulted on in terms of their forecast spend, and that's what's set out in the tables in the report. We know that some of the spend on the Rural Economy Prosperity Fund looks, there's some zeros in there. That is because the majority of those district authorities are putting that money towards grant funding to various organisations. the grants have all been communicated, the opportunities are out there, so the spend, the defrayed money is expected to remain on target, but will come in later in the year. I can take questions on any specifics in the report, do my best to answer, but the recommendation for you today is that the final half of the money is transferred down to the district and county council to continue the delivery. That will instill confidence in the district councils and the county councils, sorry, I should say Torbay as well, forgive me, to continue to deliver those programmes. We're also highlighting there's a further review period in January, and we'll be able to come back to the CCA board at that point to have any recommendations on escalating any underperformance, which we're not expecting at this stage, but obviously things do happen. There is provision in each of the grant funding contracts between Devon Council on behalf of the CCA and all the recipients. So should there be underperformance, there are clawback mechanisms. That would also be an opportunity where any partner is not delivering the full quantum of outputs and others are over delivering, that we can reallocate the funding. That's provided for in those agreements. But at this stage, I'm saying to you that the projects are on track, the outputs are on track, and the spend is where it's expected to be.
Thank you very much indeed. So to formally bring this onto the table, I invite Councillor White Alec.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind us all, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, the forerunner or part forerunner of it was the European Social Infrastructure Fund. You know, money given to us by Europe. You know, Europe. Europe. But yeah, and of course there was a lot of good work done over the years through that, and this was a sop to sort of do that. However, having said that, if you read some of the papers and what's going on in the districts, the county, and of course Torbay locally, is actually good. If you read it, there's a lot of good projects in there. There's a lot of good work that can be pointed to. And something, Chair, I would hope through our comms that we actually celebrate some of this on how we're working together, districts, county, and of course Torbay underneath the umbrella of the authority to get this going. And I would just say there is a message there for when the funding comes to an end, what will replace it, and also when the districts come to an end, just exactly how we can ensure that this is being diverted locally, because you have got the skills locally within those councils to look at it. With regard to the recommendation, I think we should support particularly 1.2. I mean, there is in 4.1 and 4.2 talks about that we could delay it. I think that would be troublesome. I think the people delivering the projects have been okay on it. We've delivered it. And so therefore, I think, you know, 4.3 is quite clear. And I think that 4.1.1 and 1.2 is quite important, that this money should be released. And as I say, in releasing it, I think we need to celebrate through our comms the good work that is going on in the districts delivering these things, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So 1.2 formally brought onto the table. Can I look for a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Move on to any questions or any comments. Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, I following on from Phil, I think it would be sad when this fund actually ends. And I think maybe as a board, we should write to the government and say that it's certainly been a success in Torbay and the districts, and that we would like it to continue even at this late stage.
Thank you. Anything else from anybody else? Thank you, Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, just say reassured to hear the comments of Carrie there about that we won't have to ever hand any of this money back, and that if there is underspend in some areas, it will be spent in another one. So that's good. Just I think in 1.2, I think we should be quite explicit about that, because it's pretty open-ended, isn't it? It just says that's the kind of a release a second tranche. Doesn't say when, doesn't say how much or whenever and things like that. I think we should say the rest of it and have a date there so that the districts and cities and boroughs know. And very happy to support Lewis's suggestion about playing government, you know. I mean, I think we're good luck with that. I think they're doing exactly the opposite, quite frankly.
And I just, you spoke about adding a date in here. Is there an amendment to the proposal that's currently on the table then, councillor?
Well, I
if there is,
mean,
what
I'm
is that?
prepared to be by, you know, I mean, Kerry will understand the mechanics better than I will, but I just think that it's too open-ended, that.
So can I help on that? I read this to release the second tranche. Once we voted, that is the release mechanism.
Oh, well, today.
Well, otherwise, you know, that is the release mechanism. In my view, I would say there's a clear instruction here to the officers to do just that, and with immediate effect.
Let's go across to Kerry then.
Yeah, that's what I would
sure
do,
that's where I would take it from. Thank you.
Suggest perhaps we could add a 1.3 recommendation that the board welcomes a further review in January, having done the review around all of the projects, and if there's any decisions required at that point, that they are escalated and brought forward to the board.
So give me the wording on that one, please.
Oh, that wasn't
1.3.
wording, that was
Give me the wording though, for the board to actually make a formal decision, please.
Sean, when is the PCA board in January?
The last Monday in January.
So at the January board,
At the January board.
to consider any changes required to funding allocations based on known performance.
I just ask a clarification there. Does that mean the second tranche won't be released until then? Is that what that means? Good, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Right, that's right.
Okay, I think we've got that down.
26th January days.
Thank you. Thank you. You're happy to include that 1.3?
Absolutely.
Happy to second that.
Yes,
1.3.
Chair, if I may, I was just concerned there's no progress report, and I will be asking my officers for a report on where we are, because at the moment it just says, you know, how much we got and we haven't spent any. So I know we have, and I know what we're doing, and we are trying to publicise it. So I think we do need an update at some stage of exactly where we've
wrap
got
it
to.
all up when it comes back for certain in January.
And I'm happy with that.
Fantastic. That's my
Yeah, just in conclusion, not that I am a representative of the Labour government or excusing them, but there is a change, and we're all noticing it with our allocations, whereby, you know, we had to go cap in hand to central government for particular projects, and then they would tell us whether or not we would get a particular money. They are now actually giving us more in the grant. So if any letter was to go, well, as the case may be, as the case goes forward, I would certainly support you writing a letter, but not so much for this funding, but any allocation to include this element. If they're not going to replace it, you know, as a particular fund, they should allocate in any allocation to the CCA. This should be noted, if you see what I mean, and then it would be a matter for this body, you know, as responsible adults, to be able to disseminate those funds without being told by central government how to spend our pocket money.
Okay. Clearly, this is coming back in January, which will give us another opportunity to pick up, you know, some of the things that have been raised, and I think that's really helpful. So this is a vote for, includes the constituent and non-constituent members on this one. So all those in favour, please indicate. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Move on to item 6, which is Devon and Torbay Corporate Plan 2535. Thank you, Anne-Marie.
So members, you have before you the first corporate plan of the authority for approval. In your July meeting, you approved the approach to developing the same. And since then, a programme of engagement, absolutely a collaborative and inclusive process has taken place. So more than 140 individuals have participated. There have been representatives from the advisory groups, from constituent and non-constituent councils, as well as representatives from business, education, housing, transport and the voluntary sector. you'll all know from your own authorities, but for us, the corporate plan is an important moment to set the strategic vision and ambition of the authority. And the approval is an important milestone in the continuing development of the CCA. Off the back of the engagement, the plan's been structured around 4 thematic delivery priorities. So we've got economic growth, so supporting innovation, investment, inclusive prosperity across communities, employment and skills, aligning education and workforce development with local economic need, transport, so enhancing connectivity and accessibility, and housing, addressing affordability, quality and supply challenges through strategic planning and partnership with Homes England. There are 4 cross-cutting themes that are explained in the corporate plan. So championing children and young people, recognising our corporate parenting responsibilities, health in all policies, sport, culture and art, nature and climate. So the plan sets out long-term ambition statements as well as a shorter-term 18-month delivery timeframe for initial implementation. The plan is flexible, enabling the authority to respond to emerging challenges and opportunities, and is before members' chair for approval today.
Thank you very much indeed. As this requires both lead members to be in support, I invite Councillor Brazil to propose formally.
Yeah, happy to propose.
Thank you, and I'm happy to second from the chair at this point. Let's move into debate. Debate. Okay, I'd just like to say, I think that this is the next milestone for us. Our thematic priorities in place, interesting, and why would they not be? But economic growth, employment and skills, transport and housing all feature heavily on this morning's agenda, and we're putting those building blocks in place. So I will move very quickly on to the vote. Constituent members, all those in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous with both lead members' approval, and therefore that is approved. Thank you very much indeed. We move quickly on to item 7, which is the skills and future workforce plan, and invite Phil Adams to talk us through.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, thanks, members. This is the final approval of the Skills and Future Workforce Plan. Members have actually seen some of this before. We've been through a relatively long consultation period on this over the last few months to refine, working with members of SEAG, but also wider members of the skills community, businesses and a few other bits and pieces. We've also learnt there's been quite a lot of narrative from the government on the skills agenda and the employment agenda over the last 4 months, notably a couple of white papers that we've had to draw upon. So what you've got in front of you today is the final iteration of the Skills and Future Workforce Plan. 4 primary areas of focus: developing the workforce of tomorrow, which is a focus on young people and around making sure that they've got the skills that they require. A productive workforce, so more around our sectors and looking at what our business community and our future economy needs. Supporting growth, economic diversification, so that's looking at the industrial strategy and its skills requirements, but also looking at some of the wider challenges we've got around diversification and skills requirements and gaps within the Devon and Torbay area. And finally, creating opportunity for all, which is pretty crucial to this document, about how we do that levelling up and those pathways on skills and employment to make sure that every individual in Devon and Torbay can access a good quality job. The document also sets out a number of principal priorities for us around working with young people in particular. We'll hear more about that on Thursday, but NEETs is going to be a huge part of some of the announcements on Thursday. Boosting workforce productivity, so looking at how we make sure our businesses are able to compete in the modern world, particularly around digital. Aligning our skills sets with some of those economic opportunities, and that actually aligns with the work that the Chamber of Commerce is doing around the Local Skills Improvement Plan. And driving inclusion through place-based delivery. So this is looking at how we work with each area within the CCA around skills and employment. We're already doing a lot around place, but this is trying to sharpen that focus. What we're looking for today is endorsement really from the board. And hopefully you'll reflect and see some of the changes and comments that we've had previously from board members who've been involved in the process. And what we're looking to do with it is to put it to bed so we can now get on with the absolutely vital job of getting the delivery out the door. Pause then.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm sure that this is one that members will absolutely support. It's a core theme for us. Been a lot of work has gone into this. I am happy to move this from the chair and look to one of the constituent members to second this. Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Arnold, and I've got that in my head for some reason. Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate that. Let's move into any debate. Councillor Wiley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a good report and the correct direction on if I had a vote, I would vote for it. And sorry, that alone, didn't I? But what I would say, there's a lot of information in here about percentages and measuring. What I would like us to see is how we monitor, and I feel sure you've got some measures within the respective councils on how you measure it. It would be nice to see here after a period of time, because it talks about so many percentage of this and how we can measure it going forward, just to see how it's working, because it would be seen otherwise it's just a lot of words with a lot of numbers, a lot of good intentions. It was nice to see after an acceptable period of time about the outcome, the outturn, and so that we can say, yes, this is having an impact and going forward, and this is why we have this policy. I would like to see if that is possible. I feel sure the data is there, Chair, but it would be nice for us to take a look at it.
We're getting nods in the right direction. The smart targets, we'll pick that up, no problem.
Just to Chair that should members approve all of the policy documents that we have here today, that will conclude the policy and performance framework for the authority, and that puts us in a position to then start reporting against it in the way that Councillor Bialik has asked.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions or debate? Councillor Brissett.
Yeah, and I suppose this report and maybe the corporate plan before it summarises my concerns that I have about all of this. Is that I've sat through a cabinet meeting at Devon County Council about the brighter futures, which is all basically is the same paper as this, and here we have it again with Torbay added on, and it's written slightly differently, but a lot of the KPIs are exactly the same, and this is what concerns you about the whole thing. I mean, what is the combined authority bringing extra that we haven't already done? And I'm sure it's been done at Torbay as well. And so it just concerns me, just duplicating work, duplicating reports, setting up more systems that seems so I mean, at the moment, we're not paying for it. So I'm sort of not that too concerned about it. But that's why, and I go back to think, that's why county will not be putting any money into this, because at the moment all we see is duplication of reports and work that has already been done, and nothing to show that it's going to make it any better or different than what the county is already doing. So, you know, that's my concerns about it. I mean, if you read the two reports, it's very hard. There's a sort of, you know, there's a risk paper between the two, so they are basically the same thing. And that was in July, and now here we are in November doing the same at the combined county authority.
I'll allow Mr. Adams to come back to respond to that, but I'd be very surprised, obviously. I'd be more concerned if they were going in opposite directions. Mr. Pruitt, did you want to come in at all with the skills agenda?
Yes, thank you very much. I think I would say firstly it was very sensible just to take a bit more time to consult on this. And I think from my perspective, both as the chair of CAG and the principal CEO of a college, that it's in very good shape. I think it sets out exactly what we need to do. There's a huge amount of policy coming out from central government around skills at the moment. We can't fail to have noticed that. And I think that this particular strategy starts to bring some of that together. So, for example, the recent post-16 education and skills strategy, which is talking about collaboration across areas, and collaboration between, for example, further and higher education. I think the skills strategy gives us the flexibility to be able to work to that. Talks about hubs and spokes models, brings in new initiatives like the the various technical excellence colleges, which built on the hubs and spoke program. So although it might be some reflection of what's already going on, actually it continues to evolve. So I think from SEAG's perspective, it's a really strong plan. It sets out the right objectives and it sets out calls to action, because I'm always concerned that we're doing a lot of talking and there's a lot of writing, but not necessarily anything happening. And I think what we've got in the plan, there are some very pacey objectives, which will, I think, be challenging, but that from my experience, everybody is up for. We know what we've got to do across Devon. And certainly from a training provider's perspective, I think we're all up for it as well, because there is a lot to get on with. And I think it also finally sets out some very helpful frameworks around the evolution of the Adult Skills Fund, which is really important. So we know exactly what that looks like. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, and actually we're also maintaining, in the short term at least, a system that we know is broadly effective, but we do need to respond to innovation and gaps as well. And I think the plan allows us to do all of that, so it gets my full support.
Thank you very much indeed. Before I go to Mr. Adams to respond, thank you, Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, taking on what Councillor Brazil says, as we stand at the moment, I probably agree with him. But moving forward, when we have reorganisation, where we don't know what's going to happen, but I would have thought the skills and future workforce plan will be vital going forward to pull whatever unitaries we have all together. As Councillor Thomas said, I would be really surprised and upset if we found that we had a completely different skills and future workforce plan than the county. So we're obviously going in the right direction. And I think in the future, it would be vital across the whole of the counties to have upper tier like the CCA, making sure that those unitaries, that we are all aligned, because we all want the best for Devon, and that's one way of getting it.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll go across to Mr. Adams. Can you also pick up on for me where the responsibility for skills and future workforce plan will sit as it moves forward?
Yeah,
it's in the paper somewhere. I read it.
Yeah, sure. So I think Councillor Brazil actually makes a really good point, and it is a really good point that we've been living with as officers over the last few months. The way that DFE and Department of Work and Pensions has set up the skills system at the moment means that it is multi-headed. So local authorities upper tiers are having to manage part of this alongside the combined authority. They haven't taken a decision about moving it all to one or the other. And what we're having to do through skills and future workforce and the Brighter Futures, which is our needs strategy for those around the room in Devon County, is we're almost having to duplicate a little bit. It is painful. I mean, as officers, I think the capacity has been challenging, but it's a reflection of where government has been. What we're hoping with this document, and I think the future, and this goes to your point, Chair, is that we are moving towards a point where this will come together in a single system, and the decision making around some of these things is moving towards combined authorities. There are always going to be elements around the inclusion agenda in particular that will sit with the upper tier, because we are responsible for people. And that is always going to be part of our job. And because of that, we're always going to have papers that come forward which will have elements of this strategy in them at the upper tier level. But I think what will happen around skills and employment in particular is we are seeing a move towards strategic authorities where funding, Connect to Work, or the Adult Skills Fund, or other funding, boot camps potentially, will move to the combined authority over the next few years. The issue around whether or not there's added value there is a really interesting one. Government's view on this is the added value comes through our critical mass as a group of parks. And actually, the reason they're keen on it and strategies like this is they get more bang for their buck by doing it through the CCA. I think it's interesting, though, and we're all finding it from Manchester to ourselves to everyone who's got a strategic authority around how it's working in practice around some of the accountability piece, which is something that I think we need to do some work on as the white paper comes forward. It is fragmented at the moment, and colleges and partners find that on a day-to-day basis. Now, that's the reality of where we are. I think in terms of this strategy, what it does do is gives us a joint framework that we can now use, and I am hoping personally that I don't have to come back with another strategy in 2 months' time that says the same thing, because as Councillor Brazil says, we've probably done this 4 times now and it's starting to become a bit repetitive for us all, but hopefully this is the last one. So it's a really good point, and it's something I absolutely agree on. As part of that, and Mr. Anstey will know, we're looking at the governance and outcomes framework at the moment as part of a wider piece of work. I think we need to make sure that that outcomes framework is very clear and we're all sharing it across institutions, so that we're not duplicated, because that is a huge challenge. Just as part of that, though, some more on the happy side. On the outcomes framework, Councillor by Alex absolutely right. What I think we need to do, particularly with the skills and employment framework, is we will do the natural nuts and bolts L&S style. But I think what we also need to do is those people profiles about growth. Because the thing for the public, and it's something we can do across all of our work, is what does this look and feel like for a young person, for a person who's gone through training? We've got those news stories. I've got 5 apprentices that I can point at this week who are just finishing, where we've funded them as an organisation. We need to be saying more on those things. And I think comms, that is absolutely something we need to do. So yeah.
Sorry, I don't have the paper or the number in my brain. I'm sure in the paper it talks about assuming responsibility, that the combined county authority assumes responsibility for the skills and future workforce plan from September next year. Is that a wish? You spoke a white paper, but I read in the paper. I thought. Sorry.
Chair, if I could. So Adult Skills Fund, September 2026, the CCA will take. So it's an element of this, but by embedding this work early, actually starts that transition. I think Phil's eloquently explained why there's been that element of duplication, but it is part of that transition to ensure that the CCA can deliver. The Adult Skills Fund absolutely will be the CCA's responsibility from September next year.
That is helpful and cleared up absolutely that in my head. Councillor Arnold.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate to everybody, very sorry, Julie and I were both late and sat now. I've seen some amazing parts of North Devon on the way here today. All things being equal, I'd have been here about half an hour, so apologies for that. So this is an interesting moment, I think, Chair, because this is the first of 3 items here, really. We've got skills, adult skills, we've got housing, and we've then got transport coming up, where my feeling is what we need as soon as possible is to have Plymouth in the room with us. I think this CCA needs to reach out to Plymouth as fast as possible, and then together we need to reach out to the government and say we would like this CCA to be upgraded with the inclusion of Plymouth into a strategic mayoral authority now, because everything we are hearing elsewhere, every time one of us goes to a conference or a webinar, there is a lot of long grass. We're not quite sure where local government reorganisation is going to land or when it will land. We hear from around the country that some quite chunky units of organisations, Wessex, for example, is not really expecting to be a mayoral this side of a general election. Surrey, do you remember the Surrey question? We were all preoccupied. Oh, well, let's find out what Surrey are doing. Well, we now know what Surrey are doing, but they're not expecting a mayor until 2031. This is now unacceptable. So, although it's not on the agenda today, Chair, and I don't really know, I certainly can't amend the motion here. I just wonder, with your discretion, whether we might be able to add a bit of AOB at the end of today, just to talk that one through, how we can start moving that forward.
I think it certainly is a live issue. There's lots of conversations. Why don't we try and get it on the next agenda? The next meeting is an agenda item.
I think probably, Chair, what will be happening, certainly as far as my council is concerned, we'll be writing that letter in the next 2 weeks. So we do need to make some progress on this. We can't hang about. This wretched LGR process is done and dusted for all of us by the end of this week. Thank God for that. That's off our desks. I don't care if people say, oh, what about Christmas? Well, there's still 3 weeks before Christmas after that. 3 working weeks before. So we want to make some progress on that.
I think any letter would be a stronger argument with all 3 partners. And that's the position that we've kind of already been working to.
I think then we probably need to understand here today that we need to make some form of contact with Plymouth about this, and which we're happy to do as Devon. But anyway, Chair, going back to the subject, I think I've seconded it, so very happy to continue to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bringing us back to this item then. So move to the vote. And this is for constituent members, with both lead members needing to vote in favour. So all those voting with the motion, please, in favour of. That is unanimous with both lead members. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. We move on to item 8, which is the local housing plan 25-27, and invite Matt Dodd to present. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Chair, and present to you about the housing plan. So what does this housing plan do? It sets up our combined authority work on housing over the next few years. It fits into our wider policy framework, which helps to ensure integration with our other policy areas. And key, it starts to deliver on the work of the Devon Housing Commission, which the Housing Commission itself suggested that a combined authority area was the right vehicle to take forward those recommendations. We've already done some things on the Housing Commission recommendations. We've strengthened what was the Housing Task Force, and that has become the Housing Advisory Group to this to this board with our chair, Councillor Ewings here. We developed the Homes England housing pipeline at the beginning of this year, which we now use monthly in meetings with housing authorities and Homes England. And those meetings have enabled us to identify areas of funding that Homes England can support the ambitions of that housing pipeline. We've started to look at our intelligence around housing and building on that housing commission. We've commissioned some work on the economic case for housing, which wasn't quite in the housing commission report. To deliver case studies on areas that have gone well in housing delivery across our area, and where housing authority have asked us to or want to deliver a sort of joint approach to government requests for information. We've been able to help out there. So, for example, it could take the form of joint letters of support for projects with various housing authorities, or working on things like the new town in East Devon. So we've already started doing some work around that, but there are this housing plan sets out more. To develop the housing plan, we've consulted widely, particularly around the Housing Advisory Group, so all members of that, Homes England, the Local Government Association, registered providers, housing developers, and others within the housing sector, and we received a number of really helpful comments that have been included in this plan. Members of the board will see there's some key, quite large pieces of work within this. The first one is the Devon Housing Commission recommended a detailed Devon-wide housing strategy, and that will be delivered over the next year, and that will include a delivery plan for our Homes England pipeline, and we'll focus on how we get the right houses in the right places that meet the needs of local people. Not similar to that, but as well as that, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which is about to get royal assent, requires combined authority areas to look at spatial development strategies. These strategies will think about the housing delivery numbers, but linking them with infrastructure and other needs. And it's key that we work together on how we develop that. And I'd like to bring back an update to a future meeting when there's a bit more certainty around what that will actually involve. But currently government is saying the delivery of that should be this parliament, and we need to work together on delivering that. Underpinning those will be how we get and build on our evidence through the Housing Intelligence Unit. So there's some key bits of work there, but there's also lots of other work included in it, which you'll see. There's challenges around resources and capacity to deliver them. By setting out this plan, we think it strengthens our position with government. We've got a clear plan. We can show that we're working together, and to try and build on some of the support we've already received from, for example, Homes England, who have been able to give us a small amount of revenue funding for this year. And so we recognise the challenges there, but we think that this plan sets out a framework for meeting some of those. So ultimately, I'm hoping that we can sign this plan off today so that we can really get on with the actions within it. What this plan does is it completes the combined authority policy framework. It builds on the Devon Housing Commission work and shows people that we've got a plan to deliver on those, so that the Devon Housing Commission just doesn't sit there as a document that was completed and quite well received. This shows that we've got a plan to deliver on it. It also keeps us working together on housing through a challenging period coming up, and shows that the housing issues that we face, we're working together on solving them, no matter what happens through things like LGR. Just to add to that, that many of the actions that are within this housing plan, housing authorities have asked us to do. So we're adding something to them there. For example, setting up the structures around chief housing officer groups, strategic planning officer groups, that sort of stuff is something that our housing authorities have wanted to do. It's been difficult with capacity to do that. We're adding to that and enabling that to go forward. So I think it's really important that we take that forward and sign this off today, because many of these are not being done elsewhere, and it moves us forward to the next stage of our work on housing. I'm going to pause there and happy to take any thoughts, questions, comments. Let's move forward.
Thank you very much indeed. Invite Councillor Lewis to bring this to the table.
Yeah, President, I'd like to sort of thank Matt Dodd and Councillor Ewing for all the hard work. I know that this hasn't happened over the last few weeks. It's been going on for quite some time with members' involvement, and it's such a major issue for all of us going forward in Devon. We have our problems. We've just put our local plan out for regulation 18, and it has been a struggle. Target of 900 odd homes by the government, and we put in one for 400. So I'd like to say, Chairman, well done to the team who produced the plan, and I think it's vital that we all work together going forward.
Thank you. And just to bring this one onto the table, then I'll let Councillor Arnott in. Move across to Councillor Cook. See if you're happy to second.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's open debate then, Councillor Arnott.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Matt. And in fact, the work of the Devon Housing Commission has already borne fruit. I've been very closely involved with the new homes task force, Sir Michael Lyons, in the what looks to be a successful application for the new town of Markham to the west, in the western end of East Devon, or the eastern exit. I'll just get that. And that is a living example. So in the key meetings for that, we have representatives from the CCA, from Homes England, from the Housing Commission. Obviously, East Devon were leading on it as well. And I think it shows, and actually, to be absolutely fair praise to the government for this. You know, they're rolling out these 12 towns. The opportunity arose for East Devon to apply.
Minute that.
You may. I've said it in public before. And I think that shows what is possible if an opportunity comes along. It shows that this CCA is prepared to get involved, and it did, and it was helpful on that occasion. So certainly I welcome this, Chair, and thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Long.
I was just wondering, Matt, as we move increasingly to the combined authority controlling housing, whether a kind of regional coordination doesn't sort of slow up development, and how the kind of individual kind of area voices are going to be kept in the housing area.
So we need to avoid slowing up anything. What we want to do is add value. I think nothing, the CCA can't do anything on its own on this. What I want to set up, what I am setting up, the Chief Housing Officers Group, is senior level housing leadership from across our area. At the moment, that's Devon and Torbay, where it goes. After that's to be seen. And similarly with the strategic planning group as well. And that's got to be the real guide for what we do, which will feed into the housing advisory group to take things forward. And I think what's been incredibly helpful about the everyone got together to commission the housing commission originally was that it showed there was some impetus there And this kind of builds on that, and this is showing people that we're moving forward on it. So hopefully setting up some of that infrastructure. And this is something I've been really, really keen on doing, getting it set up so that with all the various machinations going on in LGR, we've still got an ability to move these things forward and start to align where we are on planning housing, where we can and where it's desirable to do so. So really aware, guarding against any slowing up of anything, just making sure we're getting it right.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would agree. There was some concern from the districts about where their housing going to be taken over, but I don't believe that is the case. I believe this is actually giving a focal point of direction. And let's remember that many of the district councils contributed in finance to this report at the start, well before we had a CCA, well before LGR was being thought about. Housing will be an issue. It has been an issue and will continue to be an issue. And actually looking at the report, I'm quite pleased because I like all the colours and the diagrams to see where we are at any one point. And that's important. That's important because we were all, I won't say scrabbling around in the dark, doing our own individual thing. There is a need in some areas to be coordinated. The planning infrastructure bill is important. And I think and I'm pleased that people are congratulating the government in their move on these new investments in big housing. You've just got to work it out, guys. Just outside Exeter, just outside Plymouth. You know, have I got to draw pictures for you? Work it out. These are where these communities are. Hopefully there'll be good infrastructure within those communities. Apart from, and this is why we need a coordinated approach in some of the urban areas, and I mean some of the towns around Devon as well, developments are just plonked on the outskirts without any thought about the proper infrastructure, the highways to get in and out, the education, the shops, the isolation that can be caused by putting a development in a particular place. And so therefore I welcome that. And I think this is where the overall view of the housing and the CCA can come to something. It's very important. And I welcome what we're trying to do here. It is difficult to unpick all of this, to take it forward, but I believe all the districts that Ken and I would represent would welcome this.
Thank you very much indeed. And on that positive note, we'll move to councillor Ewings.
I would just like to add, bringing in from what Councillor Brazil and Councillor Arnold were talking about with Plymouth. It's essential, particularly with the infrastructure, that Plymouth is involved with this because, you know, we keep building and building, but the hospitals aren't really getting any bigger. And the same will be true for RD&E in Exeter fairly soon. With you know, new towns being created in the east of Devon, west of East Devon, that one, and the east of Exeter. There we go. But those hospitals don't really get considered when, you know, you just want a development of 1,000 houses within that area. We need to look at it as a collective as to how many houses. I mean, if you go to Derriford at the moment, you go to one bit for your kidney dialysis on a, you know, road on an industrial estate. You go somewhere else for the eye infirmary. You go somewhere else for this and that. And they're moving all the bits out because the actual hospital's not big enough. And with all the numbers of housing that are needed, and I think Plymouth is about 10,000, you know, it's got to get built overall. We need to be looking at the infrastructure. For example, no reservoirs have been built since Rodford Lake was created, and that was back in the 80s. There has been no reservoirs built in Devon, you know, and we talk about climate change and all the rest of it. So the infrastructure is really essential as to what is going on with it and how we look at it as a whole. And if we keep some of the housing issues within districts, that won't happen as easily. So the spatial planning framework is vitally needed, and you know, we are looking into acquiring a spatial planner because none of us have the qualifications to do it, and that is part of the role of this CCA. And as we say, there's bills that are going through the Lords at the moment, some waiting royal assent. There's a lot that's coming in with planning and infrastructure and housing. So I hope you can support this today. And a big thank you to Matt and the team, because I've not been quite as involved as normal due to falling off the ladder.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't quite share the enthusiasm of others here. I'd like to see more pushback from this. Why we continually think the market will deliver the houses we need in the country is extraordinary. Never has, never will, and yet we are pandering to developers because they want more land to land bank. We've given plenty of permissions in the South Hands where I live for housing. It's not built because developers don't make enough money out of it. Nothing else. That's the only reason. And there's not enough pushback in here about saying we should be forcing developers to build the land, and if they can't, they should give it up. Probably at a loss for them. I don't see why we should support them with that. The demographics in Devon, you know, the Housing Commission report was very clear that we're being overrun by old people. There's nothing in the report that says about that, about how we should say that if we're going to allow the developers who do retirement homes, that they should only be for local people. That's what we need. Well, we don't need lots of people retiring down here. Nothing, you know, of course they want to retire down here, best place in the world to be. But we can't handle it with all the stuff. So there are things within there that I think we're too complicit with government. And my final thing is that I keep reading through it and it keeps saying affordable housing. We all know that's not affordable. I think we should take affordable out of social housing only in there, because quite frankly, it's an excuse for developers and government to say they've built affordable houses as if they're dealing with our housing need, when they're not, because those houses are not affordable for local people. Until they link affordability to local wages, that is a misnomer, and we should not use that word. So, you know, it's fine as it is, but I just think it's too timid, and we need to be putting down our stools and saying no. You know, quite frankly, this is not going to deliver the houses that our communities need, and as such, we can't be that supportive of a government who are pushing ahead. They just see house building as a way of growth rather than actually delivering our need. So those are comments. I mean, I will support it, but I think it's a missed opportunity.
I just want to just clarify something around the affordable housing thing. I think, yeah, I can see exactly where Councillor Brill you're coming from. There's lots of different tenures. What has been quite positive is that the new affordable homes programme is requiring 60% of it to be delivered at social rent levels, which I think is the social housing that you're quite right in saying is needed. So I think that's a really good progress, and I think what we're trying to do with this plan is make sure that we've got stuff in place. We can work closely with Homes England to make sure that that comes into our area as well as it can. And I think there's a bit of, you know, wording where if we're at least talking the same language as Homes England are on this, then it helps us to work with them closely on it. So that's all I'd say. I think there is a real shift on the focus of the affordable homes programme. So that stuff delivered by registered providers, whether they be councils, which is a real encouragement for councils to be building as well. So, you know, that tenure I think is more affordable to local people.
Thank you. Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair, for permitting me back. I think I wasn't going to be a bore about this Malcolm place, but I only need 2 minutes. So first thing I'd say to Councillor Baralik is it's known that there is the community of Cranbrook to the east of Exeter, and it is not ideally rolled out. You know, we only recently got the town centre done and stuff like that. So it was a plum example of what Councillor Brazil has said earlier. It was a developer-led scheme, and that caused all sorts of trouble. The concept of Malcolm is that, and as a district council, what we've been doing, working incredibly hard, is on its governance structures, how you roll it out, who the participants are, who sit on the various boards. Now government is involved, that gives it another level of complexity. And because of the instability around LGR and mayoral, we don't really know who's going to be king of the castle of that even now. Will projects like that get sucked up into a mayoral authority? Will the Secretary of State want to direct it himself or herself directly from London? It's quite a complicated picture. All we can say is that we have got a plan now for a community of probably about 10,000 people to be rolled out before 2040. And that's not just about providing housing numbers for the sake of it. That is a planned community addressing all the points the council you absolutely makes about health provision as well, about transport, which is what we're here to do, or is the mayor going to do it? We just don't know. So what I like about this is that we're just putting one foot in front of the other for this. We're putting this in place. Meanwhile, other things are going on. The last thing I would say is that when you build these new communities, if they're near to a motorway intersection, which is what Malcolm is, the evidence is that a lot of people in Malcolm won't actually be working next to them. They will probably drive around Exeter and go down and be part of the provision of the increased workforce that's needed in Plymouth. So it's quite a complex picture, but just a bit of local colour there, Charlie.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Fagdock.
It's interesting, isn't it? What our perception is and what people would expect from us. I don't know about other councillors, but whenever I go out and speak to people, one of the big issues about housing is the lack of infrastructure, is the lack of what public see as planning. And I think this is a prime opportunity to put more effort into it, for the CCA to have a bigger voice. We all know that builders today are like what we used to see years ago, prospect builders, and it's all about money, and it's not about care at all. And I think Julian's absolutely right. I think we should bring in regulations if we can to stop builders banking land, and maybe even charging them. And I think it was one of your ideas, Julian, about the idea of as soon as people put in plans for houses, start charging them council tax. What we've got to do, the system we're doing at the moment isn't working very well, is it? And I think that means there's not enough of us thinking about it. And I think if we can all think about it, then we're going to be able to deliver something much better. And also, this follows on to everything like transportation, communication, absolutely everything. We've allowed smaller areas to control too much. We really need to have a better plan for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. Okay, let's move on to the vote then. What constituent members, all those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. That is unanimous with both lead members supporting, and therefore it's approved. I am conscious of the time, so I think hopefully on item 9 we might be able to catch up a little bit of time, quite quick one. And that's governance of the combined county authority, and invite Amanda Barlow to talk us through this.
Thank you, Chair. I will keep it very brief. I think that was this. So this paper is in respect of 2 matters. The first is to give effect to the nomination by the Devon District Forums of the appointment of Councillor Dowden in place of Councillor James. Members will be aware that the Constitution does not permit for members to be members of the adult. So the Audit and Governance, thank you, committee. And the second element is for the vacancy in respect of the Police and Crime Commissioner. So I think given the uncertainty at this stage for future devolution arrangements and to allow greater flexibility to the CCA in adapting those developments in the future, that is to remain that non-constituent position to remain vacant. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to move from the chair. Looking for a seconder in the room, please. Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Bayali.
Yes, thank you. And I know you want to be quick, so I'll be very quick. Whoever wrote this paper, and I know that it takes a while for the paper to come forward, it takes a few times. You had a good insight there on what's happening with this particular position. Let's see if you know what I mean, because it ain't going to be there. Yeah, 2028. So well done, well done. And if you could give me the 6 lucky numbers for Saturday, I'd be even better. I'd like the constituent members to consider an amendment or an addition to this. I think it's an absolute waste to have this just held in abeyance. I'm going to suggest that you make provision for a 3rd member, non-constituent member from the Devon districts. I mean, you've only got to put up with this until 2028. So we ain't going to be here much longer than that. So I think at least we turn up, we come along and we participate. And I think that would be an added voice around this table, a democratic voice, although they've been elected. And I would like you to consider asking the Devon districts to bring forward another non-constituent members rather than leave it blank and nobody there. Thank you, Chair.
Can we get, where are we within our constitution? It would be my first point of call.
Chair, that's just what I'm trying to work through in my head and what the legislation requires. I wonder whether members, the better, having heard that, we take that away, explore all of it and bring it back to the next meeting, Chair, if we may.
Okay.
Would it help, Chair, if a full voting member was to back up councillor Alex?
We've taken that as an action in any of it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I'm not against.
No, I know.
But I want to make sure that actually, you know, we're not falling foul of our own constitution in a meeting to just try to appease Councillor Bialik. Councillor Ewing.
Can I just add that actually we really struggled to find members to be able to sit on this committee because like I can't sit on it because I chair the housing advisory group. Councillor James is on the audit. I'm also on overview and scrutiny. The members of us that are active, for want of a better word, amongst the Devon, the district leaders, we struggle, don't we, Sean, to actually find someone.
Okay,
we've got the actions. Let's move to the vote with the greatest respect. Only because there's a couple of items and I've got 10 minutes if it's just going to be any good at all. Okay, so moving to the vote then. All those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you indeed. Let's move straight on to item 10, concessionary fares arrangements, and invite Sean and Stickles.
Thank you very much, Chair. And just Damien Jones is also here as the Deputy Director of Transport Operations from Devon County Council. So I'll just make sure I cover all of the points, and then if there's anything like this, that's good. Members, this is the first year that the CCA is publishing the concessionary fares arrangements for transport across Devon and Torbay as the local transport authority. Whereas we know in the second paper we exercise those powers concurrently and both constituent councils at the moment. There was a requirement for the CCA to publish the scheme 4 months prior to its implementation, and by the 1st of December at the latest, which is why it's been brought to members today. In developing the proposition that's been brought to members, officers have been engaged with both constituent councils and within the constituent councils, and the recommendation is to continue the existing scheme that has been in force for 25-26 into 26-27. Again, related to the next item as well, we're still working through the operationalisation of the CCA as a local transport authority. And so the recommendation this year reflects the fact that this is a CCA published scheme, with the administration and reimbursement of concessionary fares will remain a constituent council responsibility for the next financial year. There is a slight amendment to the Torbay element of the scheme, which is to introduce companion passes, and the implications of that have been discussed with officers at Torbay Council, and I think that's all I need to say, unless Chair, there's anything like this.
Thank you very much indeed. I invite Councillor Cook to be happy to propose.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis. Happy to say. Thank you very much. Any comments? Councillor Bialik.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the concessionary fare arrangements, and I don't know, do I need to declare an interest?
Why do you have one?
So yeah, absolutely. I'm of the age. Can I say I want to hopefully cheer up the Vice Chair here a little bit, to actually offer up some additionality and tangible benefit that the CCA could bring to this matter. Congratulations to Torbay for introducing the companion pass. And I understand government has given a bit of a remit, although not much more money, to allow passes to be given before 9:30. I asked Sean to give me some information, and thank you very much for that information. I mean, we have something like 150,000 pass holders in Devon, with about 33,000 in Torbay. That's a lot of people. One thing I was looking at this, I was looking at the EQIA. And I understand Sean's told me, because I asked Sean, where is it? What does it look like? What have we done? And I understand we're relying on what went before. I'm not so sure we should do that, because I think we need to look at people with disabilities, young people, a lot of people on low wages throughout. We've been talking earlier about our skills and workforce, and you read that paper, all about people who are young, who need these skills. Looking at the corporate plan, transport is the largest contributor to carbon emissions. I get that, and then we still lack reliable, affordable, and integrated transport options. There's a lot of people, and I speak from an urban area. Oh, by the way, I end up waiting for a bus most probably as long as you have to wait for one in the countryside in Exeter. And I do believe it adds to the isolation. If we are true to what we want to do, we should be looking, and we need to consider, and I would ask you to consider, constituent members, of extending. And I see where Sean has estimated that it would cost an extra £2 million. I find that's quite high. Of a budget of about 12 million at the moment, I find that high. However, that's just me finding that high. I'm thinking that this would be a more magnificent thing, that this CCA could actually say, we are actually delivering change. We are absolutely giving that additionality. We are actually making a tangible benefit to the people's lives here in Devon by extending that. And we can take the lead from government, who've decided not to increase the rail fares this year, the first time in 30 years. There is still a lot of people in rural poverty, and actually saying to people, and if the wages are around about the national minimum wage, and then maybe only part-time, and so therefore there's a lot of problems getting people in and out of work, especially covered by the EQIA. We need to be looking at that. I just don't mean older people like myself, although a lot more pensioners are in poverty and have to continue work. We could actually be doing something, and there's a number of options, rather than just saying it's £2 million.
Can I just stop you in your flow just for 1 second? Because
I was going to give you the answer there.
Okay. Well, I don't think you can. Well, I think one of the difficulties that we've got, no matter how strong an argument you put forward, is the time that needs to be. We have to make. I understand we have to make this decision by the 1st of December.
I'm happy for you to make that decision, but I'm just saying to you, you can look forward. You don't have to do it right away. You can actually say this is on the horizon at some stage. We can be given some additionality. We can have a tangible benefit. You know, we don't want to be same old, and dare I say, we don't want the least worst option here on this particular matter. We could be a little bit outward looking on how we can look at residents in our communities, in the rural areas in particular. And there's even, I know the minimum is £3 at the moment, but you know, if you're on low wages and you're on part-time and you've got to pay £3 or whatever the return ticket is, you know, we could even have a smaller contribution of £3 for people with a pass before 9:30. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of options open to you. And all I'm asking you to do is to think about it, consider it, not do it for next year, but consider it and look about, you're going to be the transport authority guy. Be imaginative, look outside the box.
Yeah, I'm going to invite Damien Jones in just for a moment to respond to some of the stuff. But it absolutely needs costing, of course it does. The decision for Torbay to include the companion passes in the council area does put in on, there is an additional financial cost to all of that. So we've agreed to include that to be in line and on the same scheme. And I apologise if Councillor Long is wanting to, I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but I just want to let me go across to Mr. Jones and then I'm coming to you. No problem.
I think it's just in terms of funding, obviously the statutory minimum is funded through the Torbay Council and Devon County Council revenue funding. The additional costs are calculated based on where they've introduced schemes in other areas and what generation that's created for the people to travel, because you have to pay for the journey that is undertaken before 9:30. But if that requires additional capacity on vehicles, for example, if they're full, you have to put additional vehicles on and pay for that as well. The other thing that this is linked with is that we're expecting the announcement, hopefully this week, about the future funding for local bus services from government, which will come to the CCA. That will be in the class that's being called the Bus Service Improvement Plan. So the CCA will be creating a combined partnership and have its own combined plan. And one of the options that the CCA can consider is what investment it wants to put in providing local bus services, reducing fares and such like. Our task up to now has been to maintain the existing statutory minimum and use any funding we've received to maintain the existing bus network, because it had a major impact after COVID.
Okay, let me come across to Councillor Long and then Councillor Flycock.
I'm particularly delighted by the companion part. Well, firstly, I wanted to say that Councillor Barleck surely can't have an interest because he surely can't be anywhere near the age of hiring a bus boss. But I'm particularly pleased by the companion class because a certain Councillor Long proposed it as part of the Torbay's budget back in February, and it was noted down by a certain Councillor Thomas. So I don't know which one is the real Councillor Thomas. Is it the Councillor Thomas who's the leader of Torbay, or is it the Councillor Thomas who chairs the combined authority? But it does come back to, and of course, we wouldn't have this problem of the Torbay budget if that amendment had been accepted back in February, but that's by the by. But it does come back to the additionality point that Councillor Brazil mentioned, that of course we could have had all this in place already if we'd only listened at the budget time. But I just thought I'd mention that because it gets it off my chest. Thank you.
I'm delighted you have mentioned it, because at the end of the day, budgets are exactly that. They are about making choices, and it's, you know, when you get to the 11th hour of any budget setting, to suddenly change something means you need to cut something else from the budget. And there are the conversations that we always have. Councillor Whitecook.
I'm personally amazed. I thought Councillor Bialik was at least my age, but obviously not. I've had a bus pass for 20 odd years, mainly because I was disabled and disabled people get bus passes. Then I became undisabled. But since I have retired, which is many years, and I'm not going into it, have I ever travelled on a bus? No. And I can assure you, your hair would be as white as mine if you waited as long as I did in country areas for buses. I think that this is something we can lead into the future. Obviously, it's nothing we can do at this moment in time. But I personally think we should have passes for people to be able to go to work in rural areas. It keeps cars down, but we've got to have the transport there in the first place. So we can only do the best we can. And I think to me, this is as good as it's going to get with what we've got at the moment. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that I would absolutely take on board what's been said, and I think that we should have a wish list for the future. And I think we ought to try and find that wish list. But that would be one of our major tasks. And I'm looking forward to it. And I hope you are as well.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. At that point, I think I will move to the vote as constituent members. So all those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. That is unanimous with both lead members in approval. Okay, we move on to item 11. In fact, our final item, which is the same transport, the future local transport authority arrangements and implementation. I'll stay with Sean and Steve.
Thank you very much, Chair. So some brief opening remarks. So this is the the next stage of the preparations for the CCA to act as the local transport authority autonomously from next April. We brought a paper to the July meeting, which members approved, which set out the work that's required between then and today. That forms the appendix that's included in the report that seeks to make an assessment on the activity that relates to local transport authority functions across Devon and Torbay. There is a complexity in that work, given the integrated nature in which the Highways Authority, Transport Authority and transport-related functions of the Education Authority interact with each other. There's also some ongoing policy ambiguity, as we've noted in this meeting, in relation to future devolution and local government of the organisation. And so the report sets out the outcome of the analysis work that's been undertaken collaboratively with both councils and the significant contributions from both councils, and sets out a proposed approach to move the combined authority to an integrated local transport authority no later than April 2028. So to develop an implementation plan over the next 2 months that takes us towards that. And the reason why we're suggesting that, Chair, is because of those policy uncertainties and ambiguity at the moment. So it gives us the ability to develop a model that allows a continuation of that which works well, but also builds on the capability of the combined county authority in the weeks months ahead, or earlier. So as some of those unknowns become known, if we can move more quickly, then that is what the report is setting out. There's a specific recommendation in relation to planning capital infrastructure schemes during that period, where we're seeking a delegation to myself and to the senior directors of both councils so that we can continue to plan those infrastructure schemes as we develop the next phase. And we're proposing to bring back a detailed implementation plan that covers, if indeed the direction of travel is set by members, that covers the sort of financial, operational and governance concerns that need to be met before bringing the arrangements into next year. So I'll stop there, Chair, unless there's, again, through you, anything from the Torbay Council perspective. Torbay officers, Simon Denby's director of Pride in Place, is clearly not here today. So he's been out with the report, and I think the same is true for Devon County Council as well.
Yeah.
So can I just bring it to the table formally, and then we'll open it up for debate. Sorry, actually, I shouldn't have done that. My apologies. My apologies.
All right, no problem. All I was going to say is I just think that what we've got here is a very good kind of, it's an interim arrangement, as Sean has just explained. It's not the full local transport authority, and what we have got here though is the planning and the strategy formation, which is backbone really for how we need to go forward. So yes, I'm happy with it. I think it's a good compromise. It reflects kind of something you touched on, that both councils currently have very good integrated transport models separately, and what we're trying not to do is disrupt that particular element for either of the two constituent councils. So it's finding that middle ground on this. And really to address the comment which came up earlier, clearly because we've been running concurrently for the last year, there will be some duplication that will have been seen where things have been looked at by constituent and at this board level.
And I know there's a lot of work gone on with officers and members actually to try to get to this position. It's been a really thorny one, to be honest, to get us to where we are. So happy to formally myself put this on the table. Look to councillor approval.
Yeah, hasn't it done it?
And we'll go to councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick, if somebody can give me a nod during my contribution on page 159. 3.7 says across DCC and the Torbay Council approximately, well, £188 million of expenditure. Is that just on providing transport, its concessions and all of that, or does that include, I don't think that includes highways, that's just the thing. It doesn't include highways. Well, okay, there is the drift of what I'm about to say. I genuinely believe that this authority should take responsibility for rail services in particular, and also supporting rail services within £188 million a year. I'm amazed that we're spending that, and we've got poor delivery, lack of buses in it. Now, I speak from that you know, my background. I've done it. I've been there. I've seen it. Right. Associated with the rail industry and the transport industry ever since 1985, 26th of October, when we deregulated the bus services in the county and across the country. That was the worst day when we privatised those bus companies. And again, in about 88, 89, that's it. We're bringing the railways back under government control, slowly but surely. Not advocating that we should go out and buy a lot of second-hand buses at nearly £400,000 or £500,000 a time. I'm talking about regulation. I'm talking about having the input of the communities in designing or working with having some ability. Ken is near Cornwall and he tells me that you get a bus regularly down the end of your road. Well, I'll be looking at some of the social media. You ain't going to be getting that bus down the end of your road because first group's pulling out. We should not be in a situation where private companies can actually dictate that to us. We should be the regulator. We should be able to regulate fares, concessionary passes, the services. When you look at what £12 million concessionary fares, that's without the tendered services. So I've been in conversations with MDs before where they have told me that nearly 50% of their budget is concessionary fares. Well, if you can find the next 50%, everybody could run free. I'm not suggesting that at all, but there is an opportunity. Now, Andy Burnham in Manchester has brought it all back under control. He actually done something with concessionary fares for young people to get people to work, for young people at the age of 16, from 16 to 18. But of course, at that time, he had to buy that, just as you're saying we would have to buy the concessionary fares of £2 million off the bus companies. And what he done was, when he took it over, they could decide who went on the buses. So it was at cost. The bus was going there. And what you're doing to a 16-year-old, you're encouraging them to start using a bus without the dream of the only way I had to get out of my village when I was growing up was to get a car, to get out, a bike, a motorbike. That was my only way out of the village. Okay, so, you know, I am a rural person at heart. I get it. Now, what we've got to be able to say to the young people and to all those people I mentioned earlier on, there is much support. Now, that helps our housing infrastructure. It goes to the heart of everything. So all I'm asking the CCA is to consider, not for next, to consider a small working group. I work with what they call the key cities. There are the core cities as well involved in all of this. You know all about Manchester, up around there, Sean. Surely, all I'm saying is, shouldn't we just look at it? And this goes back to Julian again. You know, we can add additionality. We can make a tangible benefit. We can actually say, as a CCA, this is what we're doing. We are forming a discussion here about bringing good services at affordable prices to our communities in the rural areas in particular, to help our young people, help people get to work. Surely that is the sort of vision that we should be exploring. And we'd be connecting up with the trains and all these things. That's all I'm asking the constituent members to consider a working group. There are lots of areas. I don't need to point you to them. You can point to where they are doing it. Lots of models that we could say. As I say, I'm not saying I'm going to, people say to me, "Oh, be a bus." No, I don't want to create a bus company. I want us to be able to regulate where we have an influence on what goes on. And I would like the CCA to give a commitment that we will, at the very, very least, look over the edge and have a look at it.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is the whole idea of being a transport authority as the CCA actually opens up the ability for all of those conversations. But
I think Chair was going to make a similar point, which is that approval of the report today provides the basis on which many of the points in which Councillor.
Well, I'm asking you to make a commitment to have that discussion. That's all. Not to make you come, to have the discussion. And if you said to us, look, it just ain't going to work, Phil, then, we're going to have to accept that, aren't we? But I just think we need to have a look at it and not dismiss it out of hand.
And I would absolutely concur, that they are some of the elements that are effectively embedded within the legislation that we were kind of granted, which opens up those conversations to be able to move to the next step, which we can't do until we've got, until we actually are I'm just looking at the word, make sure I get it right, local transport authority. Once we get that, in place, that legislation, and I think that comes down to us from April 26, legally, officially, not until that point.
All I was going to say is I think the recommendation regarding the implementation is really important, the point that's being made, because a lot of the work that's going to have to be put into this is looking at what the local transport authority from 26-27 should be doing. And also, just to clarify, the 188 million, or it isn't relating to the highway authority functions, but that is the vast majority of that is the building of the infrastructure that the transport authorities of Torbay and Devon have historically prepared over an average year.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Long.
I just want to say that I look forward to those discussions along the lines that Councillor Bialik outlined, but I really just wanted to congratulate Mr. Anstey on using the phrase direction of travel in the report on transport.
I thought so, Blue.
I think we're all, well, yes. I know I'm here as a councillor hoping to bring some vision. And I think that, and I applaud that we are looking to the future, and I'm really looking forward to this, that we can possibly do something. So yeah, thumbs up from me.
Fantastic. I think that's all the questions asked. Let's move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous. Again, we've got lead members voting for that. But thank you very much indeed. That brings us to the end of our time together. I just let you know that the date of the next meeting is scheduled for the 26th of January at 11 a.m. and we'll be in Newton Abbot in January. And I will just finally end by wishing you all a Merry Christmas. but actually, just to extend that invite for this afternoon when we're going to spend some more time over in North Devon. Thank you very much, everybody. Good. Yeah. See you later.
Yeah, we do. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I was sat on the left.